Welcome to our Cybersafe Digest weekly podcast, episode 13. Each week, we will unfold the most recent cyber attacks and will provide you with valuable insights on how to shield your business from these threats, along with practical steps and tips to enhance your cybersecurity.
So welcome to our Cybersafe Digest, the second part of our disaster recovery. I'm Martin Roberts, Managing Director of New Ways, and I'm here with...
Toby Stevenson, Chief Technology Officer at New Ways.
Okay, and hey Toby, we have got great experience of setting up backups and seeing backups. We've also seen in our time them not working. We've been called in to help people. The truth be told is that actually backups set up even by the least inexperienced people often work. It's the second part of it, the recovery, which doesn't. Would that be fair?
Yeah, and I think you alluded to it on the last podcast, backups are easy and recoveries are hard, and backups don't necessarily need that much planning around them, but the recovery process or the restoration process does actually need some planning, and it's actually kind of a case of the tail wagging the dog. You need to do the recovery planning first, so you know what your backups need to be to correctly give you the recovery mechanisms that you need.
Now, I think one of the things that people, in simplistic terms, miss about backups is verification.
Yeah, exactly. We've all seen the backup successful messages and emails that pop in when you've got backups being done, but what does that actually mean? What does it actually prove? And the answer is that the backup job thought that it did what you told it to do successfully. Yeah. You may be fortunate to say, couldn't back up this file, couldn't back up that file, but doesn't necessarily make it clear that you missed whole chunks out of your original configuration. Yeah. As an example, I saw a business where, thankfully it was in a period of testing, but running through their legacy backup solution and running a test of a particular server, and there was whole chunks of files missing because they'd not been clicked in the selection box. And a backup success report wouldn't tell you that because it did exactly what you asked it to do.
Absolutely.
So it was only the testing of that showed that there was an oversight somewhere. So
just thinking about it, I mean, have you experienced that horrible moment, which I have over the years, and fortunately a long time ago, whereby we've got to the backup, we've come to restore it, and actually it won't restore at all.
Yeah, and it happens more commonly than you might think. And ironically, it became a bigger problem when we started moving to disk-based backups than tapes. So tapes are often poo-pooed as a poor relation, and they don't hold a place in the backup strategies for most small to medium-sized businesses. They hold a place in enterprise backups and in the hyperscale providers, so your Microsofts, your Amazons, those places. But tapes were very good because they performed a lot of data verification when they wrote the data to tape. So for the most part, the data was good. That said, they were very susceptible to temperature changes, moisture changes, so they had to be kept in a nicely air-conditioned environment so that they were not exposed to any kind of degradation. But actually hard disks, comparatively speaking, there was a study maybe 10, 20 years ago that talked about the respective failure rates of writing data to them versus tape. So although the use of drives as a backup destination drove the price right down because you didn't need an expensive tape drive, and you could use commodity drives to do it, it actually introduced a greater level of error rate, so that actually you would do a backup to a drive and the software would say, all is great, and then you try to restore from it, it says can't read from drive. And that's not particularly helpful when the server is got a big blue screen on it saying won't boot or something like that.
And I think this is let's talk about the impact of recovery and a disaster and recovery on a business, because this could all seem very, very dry, but I've been in situations where the business is stopped. People are phoning in, wanting to know where their orders are, wanting to place orders, and you're not telling the customers that actually we might say we've got a bit of a problem with the computers at the moment, but we're not saying it's what it is. And suddenly everybody in the business is under pressure, and the people leading that business are suddenly having to make decisions that they've never had to make before. Because what you're actually doing in that situation is trying to fix the server, the computer, because the last thing you want to do actually is go back to last night's backup, or the day before, or the last week's. You're actually trying to get everything working. So you're balancing on this knife edge all the time. You are saying, hang on a sec, do we actually want to take this huge step to restore this data from 8 hours ago, 24 hours ago, whatever? Or do we want to just hang on and see if we can get this hard disk fixed, and so we can be back to where we were an hour ago?
Yeah, and it is a really difficult decision to make, and it's often compounded by suboptimal backups not giving you sufficient options for recovery. If you're faced with the prospect of having to go back to last night or before the weekend or whatever it is, that can encourage you to try and fix the problem. I think the other thing with doing a restoration is if you're doing an in-place restoration, you're kind of burning your bridges as well. You're kind of going all in. Okay, we've accepted that the server's broken, we can't fix it, we're going to have to restore all of our stuff back over it and hope that A, the restore works okay, and that the problem's still not there, and there's a lot of uncertainty around it. So in many ways, I kind of sympathise with the teams of people that say, let's try and fix it first. Yeah. More modern backup solutions can take some of that away because you can kind of validate your recovery position on a more frequent basis, and typically that recovery point time is normally much closer to the nature of the problem.
Yeah, I think what I would say to anybody who runs a business that needs business continuity, backup and restore, is afford a good solution. Make sure that you spend the right amount of money. People will take you through the options and will assess your level of comfort with risk. And whatever you can afford at the right price for you, you should do. Because, again, as we mentioned in the last episode, it's an insurance. And if you pay cheap insurance, you'll get cheap cover. There will be lots of exclusions. If you invest the right amount of money into a backup and disaster recovery solution, then you'll get that functionality you need to be up again doing business as soon as possible.
Well, an interesting thought exercise around that is you can't have a backup that's too good for the business, but you can have one that's not good enough. You can never do too much. You can never, there's never too many bridges to cross. And I think one of the things to help you build out that value proposition, understand what you should be investing. We touched last time on this downtime calculator, but there's two critical metrics really that a business needs to decide. And this is not an IT decision, this is a business decision. It's what is our recovery point objective. This is how much data can we afford to lose if the system goes down. And we refer to that as the RPO acronym. We also then have the recovery time objective. How long do we want it to take us to get back in the event of a problem? That's our RTO. And those two things, once we define those, we can then start to build a solution around those things. So everybody says, I don't want to lose any data. I want it to be back there as it was the second it went off. Yeah, you can have that, but it's going to be ridiculously expensive. Banks do that. They have real-time backups, transaction line backups of all of their data because that's what they have to do. The reality is that's not affordable for most SMBs. So we have to be a little bit more realistic, but it's not unrealistic to say I want to have a recovery point objective of an hour. So I want to restore my system as it was an hour ago. That's not unrealistic. That's perfectly attainable. It's going to cost more than buying 10 USB hard disks and having someone manually swapping them. But what's the RPO and the RTO of those things there?
And I think the where you can get help there to help understand the calculation is really to say, well, what's your business like? I mean, how many orders do you take in an hour? If you take 1,000 orders every hour, and you've got a bankload of people putting those orders on, then my goodness, that's going to be a different calculation to if you're a company that takes one order every hour, or 5 orders a day. You can have a different recovery time objective and the amount of data you need to recover. And that's an important calculation.
But it's the important thing, I think, point I want to make is that this is a business decision. This is not a technology decision. Technology supports the business decision, but we need to understand what that business outcome needs to be so we can build technology solutions around delivering against that.
Yeah, because there's no point in us telling you that we can restore you in 2 days if actually you've got those 20,000 orders in that time.
Exactly, yeah, it's a mismatch.
Yes.
It's just not appropriate for the business.
Now, we've actually been talking about business continuity for really server-based solutions on site. Of course, the world has changed significantly in the last few years regarding, the software we use, particularly office software, productivity software. Most people, well, maybe a lot of people now subscribe to Microsoft Office, Office 365 and such like. And there is an assumption from a lot of users that it's all backed up. It's all there for them.
There is, yeah, and it is something that is an education piece, and we try to use every opportunity that we get to remind and educate people that actually that's not the case. Microsoft will commit to putting the stuff back as it was when their system broke. So if they have an outage, they will put the data back as it was when it broke. But if you go and delete a load of stuff, well, that's on you. And Microsoft calls this their shared responsibility model, basically saying that they're responsible for the underlying platform, you're responsible for what's in it.
And so an example there is if I go and delete a load of stuff, it's deleted.
Yeah, there are some native recovery tools, like big recycle bins in a lot of the Microsoft Cloudy platforms. If I was a business owner, I wouldn't want to trust my business to recovering data back through those mechanisms. They have certain limitations, which you can find out about the hard way. I don't know, I can't remember the exact number, but there is a number of files, for example, if you delete from SharePoint, that will be available in the online recycle bin.
Right.
If you delete more than that, then the first lot do get pushed out, so you don't get everything back. So that's a particular problem if you get ransomware and you want to restore stuff back. If you've got more than, let's say, 50,000 files in your online cloud storage, which is entirely possible, you might find out that if you have to put all of that stuff back using the native recovery tools, you might not get everything back that you're expecting.
And of course, what we're talking about here is, if I've got 1,000 files in my SharePoint or in my OneDrive, is there time stamping on that? Can I go back and find a version of what I had from 6 months ago and compare it to the one I did last week?
You can within reason on certain platforms. So things like OneDrive is actually quite good at doing that.
Yeah.
So your Word documents, PowerPoint, Excel, those things, you can actually look at previous versions. And it gives you a timestamp of when they were last saved and updated. You can open them up in parallel, do a comparison, and then choose to restore over the top of it. So there is an element of self-service in there. It's massively easier to do that if the file already exists. So it's fine for when an end user, puts a dot instead of a question mark and they want to restore it back. It's not quite so end user driven if they have deleted everything out of OneDrive and want to put all that stuff back.
So, I mean, there is this assumption on a lot of users' behalf that actually it's all looked after, but you should be investing. I'm sorry about this, folks. Investing means insurance. You should be investing in additional backup solutions for your Office 365.
Yeah, it's vitally important that every organisation is responsible for their own 365 data. If you just type into your favourite search engine, Microsoft Shared Responsibility Model or Shared Responsibility Matrix, makes it quite clear what they do and don't do across their different cloud services. So that said, people need to invest in additional solutions and additional tooling to make sure that their important business data that is held in cloud services is being backed up.
Okay, and that obviously applies also to other instances, other products. So Microsoft do a product called Business Central, Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central, which is an ERP system for SMBs. Again, there you can recover some of that data, but again, you need to invest appropriate.
Yeah, and the same applies for Salesforce and NetSuite and all of these cloud services. very few of them will be committing to backing up your data at your behest. They will secure the platform so that if they have a problem, they can bring the platform back. But most of the time, it will be the onus is on you as the owner of the data to secure that correctly.
So it's worth knowing as a business owner or a business leader that actually the default is not a robust backup strategy and restore strategy with these services you're buying. You know, you're paying a subscription, but you're paying a subscription to use that product and to store some stuff and make it available to you. But it doesn't give you a gold-plated solution.
No, that's right. That's right. They are underwriting their ability to provide the service. They're not underwriting your inability to delete things.
So we've talked a lot about the old world of server-based computing on site and such like, but actually, you know, it's still a very prevalent model. A lot of people work in what's called a hybrid situation these days, where they might have local servers and they use things like Office 365 or other online services, which makes it slightly more complicated, of course. But you know, don't make that assumption that what you've got covers everything, because it won't. Sadly, and there's two ways of finding out. One is to ask the questions, and if you don't know what questions to ask, go to your MSP, go to an IT services provider and say, what am I covered for? What happens? What happens if this fails? What happens if that fails? What happens if I lose this? How do I get it back? And they'll help you. And you'll find out the truth, which may not be as what you imagined it to be, as regards of how you would get back into business in the event of a disaster. I'll return to what we talked about in the first episode, really, regarding this little series here, which was disaster recovery. We used to talk about fires, problems with buildings disappearing, servers breaking, hard disks failing.
Yeah, bad Windows updates.
Yeah, but the most prevalent thing these days is ransomware and compromise from bad actors. They cause us more problems than anybody else. They're the most prevalent attacks that cause these issues. In fact, I think in all the years I've been in this business, which is now getting close to 40 odd, I think I can probably count on the fingers of both hands those disasters I've seen which are genuinely about hardware failing or places burning down. The ones I can't count, because I don't have enough fingers and toes and such like, is where people have been compromised through bad stuff happening.
Yeah, those kind of natural disasters, you know, fire, flood, earthquake, meteor shower, all those things are relatively, although they're high impact, they're relatively low frequency. As you say, cyber attacks, ransomware, and business email compromise are probably the bigger and more common threats that affect data. Yes, we can have hardware failures, we can have software failures. You know, it's not unheard of for a particular software vendor to release a patch that breaks something or temporarily breaks it, and you know, takes the server offline for 2 or 3 hours while people work out how to back it out and how to deal for that. The other one that we mustn't forget about is just accidental error. You know, people deleting stuff because they don't think they need it anymore. I've lost count of the number of times that people say, I was doing some housekeeping and I got rid of all this old stuff and then I realised.
I'll take you back to a story which I don't like to repeat too often, but it's when I was first getting around computers, and it was on a deck. You remember digital?
Yeah.
PDP 1184, it's a very old machine. And we had
they knew how to name computers back then,
didn't they? And it was housed in a really good air-conditioned office. It was so cold in that office because that computer did not kick out some heat. And I went in on a Saturday because I was implementing a CRM system, and I was doing some tidying up, and I didn't understand necessarily all of the command line stuff. And I typed something in, and I was sitting in the computer room because it's where the console was. And I typed something in, and then it started telling me it was deleting stuff.
Oops.
And I have to say, at that point, even though it was an air-conditioned room, which was sitting at around 2 or 3 degrees, I have very rarely sweated quite so much as I did at that point. And I got very warm. Good fortune was actually I was able to pick up the phone and contact somebody at the corporation that looked after us, and I spoke to a security guard because it was Saturday morning. Mm-hmm. He got somebody out of bed, and they came into the office because you had to in those days.
Yeah.
And they logged on and they fixed it because of a good backup, by the way. But yeah, that was a human error, and that was mine. And that's why I learned at that point never to do something I didn't quite fully understand.
No, little knowledge is dangerous.
Yes, it was absolutely that. And I always used to therefore ask people, I'm about to do this, should I do it?
Yeah.
Anyway, big lesson from this time is, if we can offer you any advice, is take professional advice about your disaster recovery, business continuity strategy, because investing an hour here or there in that, asking the right questions, having somebody take you through what you need to consider, what is available, what you get for your money, is money well spent.
Yeah, definitely. It's such an important safety net,
yeah.
And it's often overlooked because it's not flashy and exciting, and it's not AI and all this kind of stuff that people want these days. But actually, it's the foundation of the security of the system. It's what you go back to if things all go horribly wrong.
And I think it's a bit like it is insurance, and that's a bit boring, and we don't like to read the small print. But going through this exercise and understanding what it is reading the small print, and people like us will help you through that process.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you very much, Toby. Very interesting.
Welcome.
Nice to go down memory lane, except for the sweaty bits.
No, well, that's the thing. It's a good job with time limited because we've probably got anecdote after anecdote we could regale, all the battle scars.
Oh no, I never made any other mistakes after that. So thank you very much. See you next time, folks.
Thank you, everyone. We've reached the end of episode 13 of our Cybersafe Digest weekly podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and to make sure you don't miss out on our future episodes, hit that subscribe button on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcast. For more cybersecurity wisdom and resources, head over to our website at cybersafe.co.uk. See you next Thursday.